In your wanderings, you stumble upon a ruined temple buried deep within the heart of the forest. Wary, you continue on through thick overgrowth until you see a clearing that was once an ancient cathedral built by people, now rebuilt by nature itself. In the center is a preserved altar, stacked with various dice of all shapes and colors. As you contemplate what this means, a cloaked figure approaches from the shadows.
Welcome, brave adventurer. Have you come to roll the dice? Explore strange new worlds with new strange rules? If you seek adventure worthy of being shared with good friends, you have come to the right place. Just roll for initiative.
Welcome to the Nat One Nerds podcast. Welcome to the table, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome back to Nat One Nerds, and we're here with a brand new system.
I can't believe we're on a new system already, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they do just kind of fly by. I'm really excited for this one, though. This one was definitely Parker's pick.
Abso-freaking-lutely.
So, in case you guys don't follow us on social media and haven't seen us with our teasers, Parker's always been a massive Lord of the Rings buff. So when he found out that there was a Lord of the Rings based TTRPG, he knew that we had to do it.
Absolutely.
And I love Lord of the Rings too. I just don't know if anyone's as big of a fan as Parker.
my Tolkien shelf is bigger than my TTRPG shelf.
He's not lying. I can see it right here.
Let's see, you got the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, the Book of Lost Tales, Part 1, Part 2, Beren and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, the whole trilogy, The Hobbit.
Meanwhile, I grew up on Lord of the Rings, but I didn't even know there was anything outside of, like, the trilogy of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit.
Yeah, Tolkien literally devised languages, and to flesh out his made-up languages further, he created a whole history, culture, backstory to these made-up languages, and that's actually kind of where Middle-earth came from. It came from being a language nerd.
I mean, didn't Tolkien inspire you to get your English degree?
I mean, he was definitely an influence. My father read me The Hobbit when I was in second grade, and then The Lord of the Rings when I was in third. Because I wanted more Lord of the Rings stuff. I wanted more dragons, which I didn't get that, but I got something even better.
Yeah, so we're really excited to pay homage to one of the godfathers of the fantasy genre. Tolkien's been super influential. Most things that are fantasy come from works like his. So we're excited to play around with the One Ring a little bit.
Oh, I would say Tolkien is the modern father. He's the father of modern fantasy.
I can see it.
I will say that, yes.
I just didn't want to offend any other fantasy buffs who'd be like, I don't know.
No, Tolkien. No, so as Brandon was saying, we are going to be starting our exploration arc of the One Ring 2nd Edition TTRPG system made by Free League Publishing, which I believe is a Scandinavian company that makes this. So
that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. They have some really good stuff out there, and I'm excited to try out their other systems eventually. But this one comes first. We must do this one first.
Ah, yes, we must have the precious.
This precious to me.
So what made you want to choose to do the One Ring? Like, obviously we discussed it a little bit, but like, how did you find it?
Well, I think the reason why I really wanted to do the One Ring is because the idea of being able to play a TTRPG in the setting of the Lord of the Rings and play within Middle-earth with cultures and people and hobbits, not halflings. We can say hobbits in this one. So, because it's within the Tolkien estate approval. So, but just all that kind of stuff. I'm just super excited to play around in the world that Tolkien created. It's so flesh, it's so full of lore. Things like D&D, they definitely have their own lore. Like the Sword Coast in Faerun has a lot of lore, a lot of different organizations you can join and all this different stuff, some kind of history, but it's just not quite the same as what Tolkien created at Middle-earth.
Yeah, Tolkien, it's one massive, cohesive, everything is here. Dungeons & Dragons, it's more like the writers they've taken on over the years, adding their tidbits to it and kind of just stitching it into the lore and building. Basically, it's like Tolkien and Middle Earth, it's the Mona Lisa. You got this beautiful piece of detailed imagery that all just fits perfectly. Dungeons and Dragons is more of a really well-made collage of people's work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And since Tolkien is an absolute genius, an amazing storyteller, it works really, really well.
So that being said, with you having your roots in Dungeons and Dragons, why go to the One Ring system instead of just doing one of the dozen adaptations of Middle Earth to D&D?
It's funny that you bring that up. So Free League Publishing actually published, I don't know if it's out in physical format yet. I think it's on the cusp, if not already. But Free League actually has a Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition of essentially of the One Ring system. So like if you really like what's in the One Ring but don't like the system and the mechanics to it, and just really want to go back to your D&D roots or do it in the D&D format, you can do that. They have a whole book for that, and it's literally just called the Lord of the Rings role-playing game for D&D 5th edition. So you can do that if you really want to. But what I'm excited is that this system, from what I've been reading so far, I feel like Free League is really trying to play homage to Tolkien and what his works represent. So like in this system, there are aspects that there are mechanics that will allow you to better roleplay your characters and still have the mechanical advantages and disadvantages because of it. But it's just, I feel like it's going to make role-playing a lot easier in that sense. And it encourages your characters to overcome challenges, to overcome weaknesses, to overcome the shadow that is spreading across Middle Earth, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited for that, and I feel like so far from what I've seen, it already looks like a great system. I'm excited to try it out. And again, it just is able to make direct homage to Tolkien instead of having to go through the lens of D&D 5th edition.
Yeah, I like how you bring up that it just fits the Lord of the Rings so much better, because you're not just adapting 5th editions to be in there, because that wouldn't really make sense. They don't have chromatic and metallic dragons in Middle Earth. You don't have sorcerers and warlocks and stuff like that. Like, there are things that could be construed to be similar, but it's definitely an adaptation. So that's one thing I love about the One Ring, is it is a true, this is if Lord of the Rings was a playable TTRPG without any adaptations, this is playing how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the pure one.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what Free League is trying to go for with this so far.
They did a great job.
Yeah, and I think they're doing a great job so far. Obviously, we'll see as we continue to explore the system and actually test it out and play it. But as we've said, so far, so good. So.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any specific expectations from it or hopes or anything?
That is a great question. I think my biggest hope is that it just simply won't let me down in this view of being, if Tolkien were to make a TTRPG, which in my opinion, I don't think he would ever want to do that, even if he knew about that stuff and all this stuff was around when he was around. I don't think he would. But if he were to make a TTRPG, I'm really hoping that this system will prove to be that what if. And I think that's my expectation for it. And so it's a high expectation, because I'm definitely a Tolkien purist. People don't watch movies with me anymore for reasons. Because nobody wants to know what happened to Frodo's parents. Nobody wants to know how Elrond and Galadriel are related. FYI, it's his mother-in-law.
So, do you think the system's going to hold up to the standards of a Tolkien purist like yourself?
I guess we'll just have to find out, honestly.
All right. I mean, from what you've read so far, it seems like you're liking it. So, and I have been able to read through it a decent amount too, and I'm excited for the system. It seems like a lot of fun. It's definitely different from what we're used to. I was talking with Parker earlier about how it's an odd mix of some aspects of it are a lot simpler than D&D. Like, character creation is a breeze. You just pick like 2 or 3 things and you're set. But at the same time, it also feels just as crunchy and complicated as D&D. So you have to switch your mindset and think very differently for it. Yeah. So I can see why they'd be wanting to do the 5th edition adaptation for people who don't want to learn the whole new thing.
Yeah, because I think there is a way to showcase a lot of aspects of Tolkien's Middle Earth in D&D 5th edition. But as you kind of said, it would have to go through that adaptation, almost like it has to get like translated and translated again to get back to the table. While this is just a direct translation from Tolkien's work to the table,
Straight from the gold
Yeah.
plates.
yeah,
So I am really excited to get into this system. Now that we've kind of talked about our background for it a little bit, let's start getting into the meat of it a little bit. What sets this system apart? Like what kind of dice system are we using here?
So the dice system in the One Ring Second Edition is pretty straightforward. The main dice you use is not a D20; it is a D12, a 12-sided dice. That is your primary dice, and it is called the feat dice.
Do you still use like a D20 or
Nope,
just straight D12?
just a straight D12, and then you'll have a few D6s on the side.
Okay, that seems nice and simple.
Yeah, there's not necessarily a certain number of D6s. Obviously, you don't need to get a big old thing of them. I think like 5 or 6 at most. I think should suffice.
I mean, if each player is bringing their own, then yeah, 4 or 5 should be plenty.
Oh yeah, you get plenty of that. So and D6s are really easy to come by.
Oh yeah.
So
Pretty much every board game on the planet uses them.
Oh yeah. So the D12 is called the feat dice, and on the feat dice you have 2 special symbols, and it's not at the 1 and 12. It is at the 11 and 12. The 11 has an Eye of Sauron on it, and the 12 has a Gandalf rune.
That's so rude that they put it on the 11. You could be so close to having it perfect, you're just screwed. Although thematically, I feel like it makes super good sense because the Eye of Sauron is looking for people who are foiling his plans. And someone who's doing a really good job is going to catch his attention more than someone who just is sucking. So it kind of makes sense that an 11 would draw the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I really like about it.
So as for the feat die and the D6s, how does that work in determining like a skill?
So essentially, as you build your character, it's straightforward. So like in D&D, just as a comparison example, in D&D you have modifiers. So as you level up or get better equipment or whatever the cause is, essentially you roll dice and you just simply add numbers on top of it to showcase your skill or proficiency or whatever, or both. In this system, you don't have modifiers, you have modifying dice, and that's where the D6s come in.
Yeah, I thought it was really intriguing to see how they did it. Instead of having your dungeon master sets a DC for the check, like say you have to roll at least an 18 to pass this. Instead, you have a target number, which always starts at 20, and then you subtract whatever the associated score would be. So say you're rolling with something with, what's one of the strength?
Yeah, strength.
You're rolling with strength. You have a strength score of 6, your target number would now be 14. So you'd have to try to roll a 14, which with a D12 is impossible, but that's where those extra D6s come in.
Yeah. So to kind of help with another comparison example, it's kind of similar-ish to Call of Cthulhu a little bit.
Yeah.
Where you kind of have that number on the paper already, and with those percentile dice, you're trying to get that or lower.
Yeah.
You're trying not to get higher than that. So it's kind of a wonky example, but just as a comparison to help with that, is because Call of Cthulhu doesn't really have DCs. It has that essentially that target number.
Yeah. And yeah, the way it works is the better you are at a skill, the more D6s you get to add, kind of like it's like your proficiency bonus. Except for instead of it being flat, it's an amount of D6s. And so that's how you're able to get those high numbers, because normally, you can't roll over a 17 with a D12. It's not possible.
No.
So you need that extra proficiency because it wouldn't be possible for the average person who doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And you can't have negative dice. You go down to 0. So the lowest you can go is just the feat dice.
Yeah.
Or the D12. That's the lowest you can go.
And they do have examples of like favored and ill-favored rolls, which is basically just their version of advantage and disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a favored roll, then you just roll 2 of the feat dice. Ill-favored, you roll 2 and take the lesser instead of the greater.
Yeah, exactly. And what's nice is that if you roll an Eye of Sauron on the feat die, it doesn't automatically equate to a nat 1 in D&D. You could still potentially succeed. Obviously, it's stupidly low chance that you'll succeed. You'd have to roll a bunch of 6s probably on your d6s, but it doesn't automatically mean a failure. It just simply turns into a 0.
Yeah.
So that 11 essentially is a 0. There is no 11. The 12 has a Gandalf rune, which, just to describe it, it's that symbol that Gandalf draws on Bilbo's door.
Yeah,
that's the symbol they're using. That's the rune they're using,
and that's essentially a nat 20 right there.
Yeah, which is nice because essentially, for most cases, if you roll an Eye of Sauron, you don't automatically get a nat 1. But if you roll a Gandalf rune, you practically get a nat 20 in comparison.
And that depends on, there are some interesting conditions that can be placed on you in here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, what's the one that makes it so that the Eye of Sauron is a nat 1?
That is the miserable condition. So to describe the miserable condition, we have to get into a unique feature of the system of hope. Hope is essentially like, again, another comparison, hope essentially is like fate points in the Fate Accelerator or Fate systems, where you can cash those in to better your odds on the roll.
Yeah, just like how we were talking about how this is a pure adaptation from Tolkien's mythology, pretty much the entire time you're adventuring in Middle-earth, you're trying to fight off the influence of the shadows and Sauron. And because of that, as you go through the game, you'll occasionally accumulate like shadow on your character, which is basically kind of like gloom, despair from fighting the shadows. It starts to take its toll on you.
Mm-hmm.
And if your shadow gets higher than your hope, then you get that despair. And the Eye of Sauron, if it sees you, you just give up.
Yeah.
And at that point, if you roll an Eye of Sauron, it's a 0. You don't get anything.
Yeah, so essentially, kind of as what Brandon was saying, mechanically, a hope, you can spend a hope to gain a bonus on any die roll, or to trigger the effects of certain cultural virtues, which in this system, there's no races, there's cultures.
Yeah, let's get into that. I know we'll talk about it more in the character creation episode, but just real quick, do they use like classes and races, or what do they do? Because I know that there are different races in Middle-earth.
Yeah, ish.
Well, you got like in actual Middle-earth, you've got like the men, the elves, dwarves, the hobbits, orcs.
Yeah. So in this system, you are always playing against the forces of shadow or the forces of evil. So your options essentially are, you can play, essentially there's races, but in this system they're called they're called cultural backgrounds. You can be a Ranger of the North. You can be Men of Bree. You can be Bardings or Men of Dale. You can be Dwarves of the Blue Mountains. You can be Elves of Linden. And then you can be Hobbits of the Shire. Although there is an interesting thing about the Hobbits of the Shire is that you can be a Hobbit of Bree.
Oh,
it's kind of like a game master, lore master option that if they want to throw out to their players, they can choose that.
Yeah.
Where you get like the physical characteristics of the hobbits, but you get the more cultural virtues of Bree men.
Yeah, and your culture does still determine some of your stats, right?
Yeah, it does. And that's where you find out how well you can do in a certain thing. In the character creation portion, which again we'll get into more detail in the next episode here, but you find out all the information you need by picking what you want. Because in my opinion, no matter what system you're playing, if there are player options as far as customization of your characters, especially when you're first playing the system, don't worry about the mechanics associated with it. Just pick what sounds fun. Just do it. Kind of like in D&D.
Yeah.
If you want to have a wizard that has the tavern brawler background or feature, do it. Like, why not?
Honestly, you're playing a role-playing game with your friends for fun. Like, obviously, people like me, I really enjoy min-maxing my characters just because it's really fun to see the big numbers. Because, unga bunga big numbers make me feel good. That's just how it works. But you don't have to play like that. Like, you're there to just have fun, so goof off with it.
Yeah, and I think especially for the first or even the second time playing a system, just pick what you like and then figure it out from there.
If you want to play a drunkard elf who uses a battle axe, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to be the traditional mystical, elegant elven ranger that can snipe a dwarf blindfolded because he's so loud in the forest. Like, you can play however you want.
Yeah, you can. Because, again, elves are all a little bit different in Middle-earth, too. Like, wood elves in Mirkwood are different than the high elves of Lindon or Rivendell.
Yeah.
Like, they're way different. Because if you read The Hobbit, those elves get drunk. I don't see Elrond getting drunk that often.
Those elves are a mess. Let's be honest.
Right? That's one thing I wasn't crazy about Legolas in the movies, is that he acted almost like this in-between of a wood... Like, he was a wood elf, but he was more dignified still.
He acts like a high elf.
Yeah, he acts like a high elf. So, that just probably is his nobility, because he is a prince, technically.
Which, in reality, their roles really should be swapped, because the wood elves are the ones who are getting high, so...
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't hold back the dad jokes.
You never can, man. You never can. So... So those are the options, and then you'll have what's called callings. Essentially, think of them as backgrounds in D&D, but they act as classes.
It's like if you rolled the background and class all into one. It's kind of like the professions from Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like that. It's absolutely more like the professions in Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, absolutely, because you can be a captain, a champion, a messenger, a scholar. So if you want to play a hobbit that's a scholar that just follows the party around, just like writing stuff down all the time, you can do that.
Yeah.
So.
And the calling also affects your stats a little bit. It helps you pick a few, you get to get bumps to that you choose from what that calling has, and it does make a difference gameplay wise, but a lot of it is just flavor. Yep. You really want your character to be built how you want to build them, because as Tolkien does, this game system is very much about collaborative storytelling. Like, the actual role-playing and combat and everything are fun, but this one is centered around telling a story as a group.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, essentially, in the cultural backgrounds, they'll literally just tell you the characteristics. They'll tell you what kind of stats you can get and where you can place them. So, like, there'll be some skills assigned to you, but then they'll be like, then choose out of this list. Kind of like in D&D, when you get a class. They'll tell you, like, you get this proficiency and this proficiency. Now pick, like, 2 or 3 other proficiencies out of this list provided for you from the total list. It's very similar to that. Because in this system, you don't level up in the traditional sense like in D&D. It's more like...
your skills get better. You add skill points to bump up your skills.
Or just better weapons.
Yeah. And that's honestly, it's much more accurate to how real human progression works, because you don't just randomly, like, become more powerful after you fight people. It's more of, you become more proficient in your skills, you gain better equipment, you get better using that equipment. So it makes a lot of sense. I like how they do that.
Yeah. No, I do too. I think it's very simple. I think it's definitely simpler than D&D character creation wise. I think you can make a character in the One Ring a lot faster than you could a D&D character.
Yeah.
And be able to grasp more the first time around rather than, because I know the first time I played D&D, it took me like 5 or 6 sessions to just get the basics of what a ranger was down. And then I think in this system, it's going to take less time than that to figure things out.
I mean, ironically, my first time ever playing D&D, you were my DM. Mm-hmm. For almost the entire first campaign we did, which it didn't go super far, went through like level 3. Mm-hmm. But I didn't even know how to use proficiency bonuses or bonuses at all. So I was flat rolling everything, and I got really frustrated because I was like, why the heck is everyone hitting stuff? Like, how is he getting a 23 on his arrow, and I can barely roll like a 10?
Yeah.
It's because I didn't know how it worked. But this one, it's honestly pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah, and instead of worrying about numbers, you just make sure you have enough d6s for whatever you're using.
Yeah.
And you just add them all together, and if it beats your target number, which I will say real quick, that target number is based, you have 3 main target numbers because there are 3
overall main stats.
Overarching main stats. There's strength, heart, and wits.
And I find it really interesting how they do it. Strength is like basically the combined force of your character, whether that's physical strength, like how imposing you are, like the strength of your personality. So it's kind of like you mix strength, dexterity, a little bit of charisma. Like, it's all just strength.
They took intimidation from charisma and put it into the strength stat.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
I mean, I can honestly kind of see that.
Yeah.
And then you've got, what is the other ones?
Heart and wits.
Oh yeah, hearts is basically just the strength of your character's soul, kind of.
Yeah.
It's like how empathetic and compassionate and kind your character is and how well they can do with those types of things and like more domestic personal skills. And then
which makes sense because in the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit's good nature, Frodo's natural good nature was what won out and truly defeated Sauron in the end.
Yeah.
It was the small things rather than the big things that kept evil at bay.
That and Sam literally carrying him through the entire trilogy. But
yeah, but as easy as it is to say that Sam is the real hero, even Tolkien kind of admitted that Sam is the true hero. Tolkien also said that Frodo is still a hero in his own right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because think about it, you're carrying the most evil possession around for like a year, cross-countrying the entire continent.
Although, the fact that Sam could carry Frodo without being affected by the ring.
Oh my gosh, not that transparency. Whatever.
That's not transitional. So they could have tied the ring to a duck and just carried it.
No. You know what? Why don't you just go ahead and ask why the Eagles didn't just carry them to Mordor?
Because they're lazy?
No. And I have a lore answer for that.
Let's hear it.
So the lore answer is why the Eagles didn't just carry them away, because number one, let's be real, Sauron would have seen that. They're giant freaking eagles flying toward him. How do you miss this?
True.
Okay? And Sauron being the powerful figure that he is, especially once you learn his actual backstory and where he comes from, yeah, he's got real power behind him. He probably could have just shot him from Barad-dûr really easily. Number two, the eagles feared the woodmen and their great bows of view because the woodmen aren't the most intelligent men around, and they would shoot the giant eagles. That's how Gandalf befriended the Lord of the Eagles, is because he took a poisoned arrow from a woodsman out of that bird, and he became friends, and that's why he rescued him from Orthanc. So, yeah.
So, we're getting a little distracted.
Also, the eagles were primarily messengers. They weren't... Yeah, they were kind of tied to the gods, who were taking a more passive stance on what happened in Middle-earth. Yeah. They weren't going to get directly involved, and if they used the eagles, that would be pushing that boundary.
I mean, that totally makes sense.
So, yes, there are more than one simple answer to why they didn't just use the eagles. So it wouldn't have been the most stealthy option. I mean, that's the direct approach.
Neither is marching an army to the front gate. It's not very smart, very stealthy either. But
well, that was a direct distraction.
So yeah, One Ring. It's really good. Great adaptation of Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's lore, and we're really excited to dig into it a little bit more in our future episodes. Mm-hmm. We'll get to go over character creation, how running the game works, and we'll get more into the nitty-gritty in our future episodes. But hopefully we're able to give you guys some useful information from the introduction, tell you a little bit about how excited we are. We're really excited when we get to actually play through it. Mm-hmm. So hopefully you guys are excited for the One Ring as we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Brandon said, we'll get into more detail about... We'll talk about all this stuff at least one more time throughout this exploration arc. And they'll definitely be showcased in our one-shot.
Oh, yeah.
There are going to be some aspects that won't be showcased in that one-shot because of the nature of the game. There's a whole system for travel monologue. There's a fellowshipping phase. There is a Yule phase. There's different phases in the game that will probably most likely just get into detail and actually describe in some way in a future episode, probably the Game Master episode.
Yeah, and like I said, the whole One Ring, because it's based off Tolkien, is all about collaborative storytelling more than individual role-playing or combat. And that's really hard to do in a one-shot that can be digested through a podcast. So we'll have to kind of slim it down a little bit when you do our one-shot, but there's a lot more meat to it than we'll be able to show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a system that, as Brandon said, it's all about character growth and telling a good story and being able to explore this amazing world that Tolkien created. And I will say one additional thing is that in the core rulebook and even in the expansions that they have, because they've come out with a couple expansions for the One Ring 2nd edition, all of it pretty much takes place in what is called Eriador. And Eriador is that whole area between the Blue Mountains and the sea to the Misty Mountains. So, like Rivendell, the Shire, Angmar, Fornost, Breland, all that area. So it doesn't involve Gondor. It doesn't involve Mirkwood. It doesn't involve Mordor, Ruhin, and pretty much all the places where it takes action at. And I think the reason why the game developers chose Eriador as the focus for the system, this area of Middle Earth in particular, is because I think there's a little bit more sandbox freedom without treading on the established canon and lore of Middle Earth.
Yeah, there's not a ton of... The main story of Lord of the Rings doesn't happen too much there.
Yeah, all the major events that are like world changing kind of take place on the east side of the Misty Mountains.
Yeah.
Although they do have a Moria expansion coming out, a whole supplement on Moria, which I'm very excited about. So
maybe we'll have to come back and revisit it once that comes out.
Oh yeah, I think it'd be fun to do an episode actually to talk about like supplements of different systems we've already gone over that have come out since.
Oh yeah,
that'll be fun. And we'll probably do a whole special episode on that D&D 5th edition version. I think that'd be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'll probably buy it at some point.
So thanks again for tuning in to Nat One Nerds. Hopefully you guys are excited for the One Ring. Mm-hmm. And we will hopefully be able to see you guys again when we come back for our next episode. Remember to check us out on... we got Facebook, Instagram, a couple different places you can find us.
You can email us at nat1nerdspodcast@gmail.com. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, whether about the podcast in particular or about the system we're exploring in particular, we're happy to get those as well.
So thanks again for tuning in. Find us on social media, and we're happy to hang out with you guys. This is Nat One Nerds signing out. Happy rolling.